Good evening and welcome once again to Who's Your Daddy? And as always, don't forget to look out for my columns on parent24.com, smn.co.za, and of course in the Saturday Star every Saturday right here in Gauteng. And if you've missed any of the episodes, they are now available on YouTube, and we'll be repeating them right here on Mindset 319 in the new year, so look out for them in your TV guide. I'd also like to welcome any new ideas you might have for the new season, so do take down my contact details, which will be up on the screen after the show, and let me know what's on your mind. But let's get on with the show. We're living in the digital age, and if you're not internet savvy, you're probably going to go the way of the dinosaur. However, with progress comes not only advancement, but new threats and risks to our socialization as we know it. And more importantly, it could have severe consequences to naive children surfing these new social media platforms. You know them as Mixit or BBM or WhatsApp or Facebook or Twitter or there are lots more. And if you've never heard of these terms before and you're a parent, you really need to get with the program fast. Now, to tell us more about what social media is all about, we have with us tonight Arthur Goldstuck, who is a well-known journalist as well as the managing director at Worldwide Works. Arthur also knows a hell of a lot about social media and the online age. My other guest is Indiana Harris, who is an online media manager and an art director. Now, she'll be telling us about some of the good stuff regarding online and why it's necessary to be there in this day and age. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Arthur, just quickly to start off, a lot of parents, certainly of my generation, have no idea about what BBM stands for or Mixit or that kind of thing. Just broadly, give us an overview of what's out there and what social media is all about.
I'll give you a quick overview as well as the numbers of people using those services, because that always comes as a shock to people. We've just completed a study of social media in South Africa with a company called Fuseware that analyzes the data as it's coming off these social networks. And we then drill down into the age profiles, the trends, and what's coming. And what we found is that the single biggest of the online social networks is Facebook in South Africa. Around 4.5 million people have registered on Facebook. About a quarter of those, though, once they've used it for a while or even just tried it out once, they go away and they don't come back.
A quarter of those?
About a quarter. So when you hear those big numbers, you've got to realize that a lot of people are not finding it the ideal environment and they're moving on. And especially the kids. The kids very quickly embrace the next big thing. And I'll come back to that in a moment.
Okay.
But the second biggest network is in fact two that are tied. That's Twitter and LinkedIn. Twitter is for very short 140 character comments, and LinkedIn is a business or professional network. So you don't find the kids there, and funnily enough, you don't find people in the arts and entertainment world taking to LinkedIn. They register on it and then quickly vanish when they discover that it's about business, it's not about networking in a social environment. And then off the online environment and onto the mobile environment, the real big one is Mixit. There are about 10.5 million South Africans active on Mixit. The numbers you often hear are something like 20 million or 40 million, but those are registered accounts as opposed to active users.
Now, I know that a lot of parents have issues with Mixit because it's very popular among the kids. Why is it so popular, particularly among kids? Is it cheap? I mean, why?
There's a few reasons. One is that it works on any phone. So if you have a basic phone without real smartphone capabilities, it doesn't have Office on it, you can't do Excel spreadsheets on your phone. Not that you should on any phone, but these are the phones that have the basic features. Even those phones can use Mixit. It's like an app that you download onto the phone. But in the days before app, you had something called a Java application.
Now let me just jump in there. I want you to go on about Mixit because it's a very scary thing. I know of parents who freak out about just the Mixit language. But how many of you know what an app is? What is an app?
An app is short for application, and an application is really a mini program on a phone. On a computer, it's a big program, but on a phone, it's a mini program that can be downloaded very quickly, very cheaply. But the beauty of Mixit then is that using it costs next to nothing. It's like sending SMSs continually, and maybe after 100 SMSs, you've incurred a cost of about 10 cents for the data that you've used in that conversation. And I've always wondered why people still use SMS when there is something like Mixit available for phones. But the reason is that adults perceive it as a children's environment and something that they don't understand. It's because they don't want to understand it. And that's part of the problem with adults' response to children on programs like Mixit or networks like Mixit.
But now, Indiana, let's just bring you in here. I mean, you manage a online sort of community.
Yeah.
Populated by mostly children. What are the fears, or what happens in there? What should parents be aware of in terms of what could go wrong?
Well, what I do is I moderate a few pages, and one of them that I do moderate is mostly 16 to 25-year-olds.
Okay, sorry, moderate means you just watch and observe and make sure that nothing... Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think moderation is key, and especially what I do, especially because I'm putting out communication. First of all, I have to be very aware of what messaging I'm putting out to kids, as well as making sure that they are looking after their own online safety. For example, I do not, whenever anyone puts a BBM number, cell phone number, email address, home address on, I delete the comment, I let them know, and I try and provide educational resource and say, please don't put your number like on our Facebook page, just so you know.
You'd think that would be common sense. I mean, you just should know, but
it's
kids,
not.
I guess, is pretty cool for them to exchange numbers.
It's not,
kind of
and I think one of the things that parents really do need to know and to teach their kids is to take the real world principles and put them into an online world. Like, don't talk to people that you don't know. Don't add a friend, something that you don't know.
Our parents have been telling us for generations, don't talk to strangers.
First of all, don't put anything onto a website or onto a Facebook page, onto Twitter that you may regret. You know, it's the same like you wouldn't do anything that you would regret later. Be careful what information you put out. Be careful of, I don't like it when certain kids maybe put, you know, details of what schools they go to on our page, or pictures of them showing their schedule and where they're going. Like, I think, you know, it's just about keeping your wits about you and actually just taking real world principles and treating it in an online environment.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, there have been some scary stories in the media over the years about people posting, you know, we've gone on holiday, or we've done on their Facebook page, and then they get burgled because, you know, the burglars are watching. Arthur, I mean, the three of us are speaking here about these platforms, and we know about it, we know how it works. I mean, there are lots of parents out there sitting there thinking, you know, what the heck are you talking about? What advice would you give them in terms of, it's one thing to tell them what to warn their kids about, but if they don't even know how the damn thing works, I mean, isn't it time for them to get with the program now and become a Mixit follower or a Twitter follower or a Facebook person?
There's no question about that. I agree with Indiana, because what parents are in effect doing is they're saying, okay, I don't know how this mall works, so I'm going to let you loose in this shopping mall, and I'm going to sit in my car and listen to music because I don't want to get involved. It intimidates me. So imagine you're letting your child loose in this environment where you are intimidated, you don't know how it works, and you're expecting them to find their way to not only behave themselves, but to trust that other people that they come across will behave themselves. It's one of the great derelictions of parental duty that I've ever seen. And it's not only Mixit, it's on Facebook as well. Facebook has a restriction of 13 and over. And you have to be associated with a school if you're aged between 13 and 17. And yet parents are allowing their children to lie about their ages and their schools when they go onto Facebook.
Absolutely, but my next question was going to be, should there be a greater responsibility on the owners or the you know, people responsible for Facebook and Twitter to build in, I won't say censorship, but like age restrictive measures that actually work? I mean, my daughter, I created a page for, we've had a book published together, so I thought she needed a platform. So I created a page for a Facebook page, lied about her age to get her there, but it's connected to my BlackBerry and my email, so any messages that come through there, you know, I'm aware of it. And she's 11 years old and she's cool with that because we've got a good relationship. But that's what I've chosen to do. Should we expect more from the makers or the creators of Facebook to build in something more that parents can sort of say, okay, I know my child won't be able to go on there because she's 11 or 12 or whatever?
There's not much more that Facebook can do in terms of people coming onto the platform. But in terms of what happens once they're there, there's a lot more that they should be doing. They should be allowing far greater control over your privacy settings, for example. It's incredibly difficult to set your privacy on Facebook and to say what categories of people can see what.
Yeah.
They tend to have blanket settings that affects everybody. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't work effectively, and Facebook doesn't put enough effort into making it work effectively. But parents like yourself also have a responsibility.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't be doing that in the first place. You can create a Facebook page that she can access through your account if you allow her to use your account, as opposed to a Facebook identity for her, because everyone now will know she's 11 years old and using Facebook, and that will be seen as a role model almost for other kids who want to do the same thing.
Good point, yeah.
So I'm pointing my finger at you, sir.
You.
But
Guilty as charged.
But the real bottom line is that what you are doing with her is exactly what parents should be doing in terms of sharing their online lives, sharing their technology lives. Parents should know, firstly, what their kids are doing online. They should know how to use the devices and the platforms or the environments that their children are using. And it's their responsibility, if they're allowing the kids to use those devices or networks, to themselves understand what the children are using. And they need to, in fact, be the final decision maker on what their kids can do online. They need to be the moderator of their children's online lives.
Indiana, again, most of the parents that they are listening to us thinking, it's easy for you to say, you know, you guys are, you know, internet savvy, you've got iPads and Blackberries and stuff. I always say, if somebody says to me about going online or opening up a Gmail account or whatever, let's say I'm talking to somebody somewhere else, I say to them, if you can read and you can operate a mouse, you can do it.
Exactly.
Because is it that easy to?
It really is. I've got a few things that I've actually done for you guys. But it basically is, I mean, the power of Google, to be honest, I think it's so strange living in the kind of age where if I need to know something, I don't go and study it necessarily. I Google it and then I find, you know, a white paper or the most reputable source, and that's where I get my information from. I cross-reference. So what they need to do is they just need to get onto Google and find out. For instance, some of the stuff that I found, I mean, just from a 15-minute search, on Facebook, if you go in and you type in Family Safety Center, it'll actually come up with a Facebook page that Facebook has actually created, which is a space where you can find out everything you need to know about Facebook. You can basically see their philosophy, what Facebook's philosophy is about safety and ongoing safety concerns.
But the sort of issue that I was trying to get at is if a 40-something, 50-something, 60-something-year-old parent is watching the show thinking, all right, I hear what you're saying, I'm going to go and get myself a computer if you don't have one, or go into the study later, and I'm going to open a Facebook account. It really is as simple as being able to read and clicking a mouse.
No, it really is. If they've been to the Department of Home Affairs and filled out those forms, they'll definitely be able to do a Facebook.
Perfect example.
Yeah, it's so easy to sign up for Facebook.
And Arthur, I like what you said, the analogy you used about going to a mall and letting your kid loose in the mall, because I think a lot of parents can relate to that, and that's a scary experience. So yeah, it's the same kind of concept, and it's even more scary because in the mall, you're letting your kids open to an environment that you're sort of familiar with. The online platforms, I mean, you could have interaction with someone on the moon, well, not the moon, you know, anywhere in the world basically. So it's sort of, it's more important for you to know how these things work.
Exactly. Even something as simple as, on the one extreme, let's say a child who plays chess online, and on the other extreme, a child who dresses Barbie dolls online, and it might be the same child. And you have a situation where they go into an environment where it seems that that's all they're doing, playing chess or dressing Barbie dolls. But in fact, all of these environments have a chat function behind them, and you can chat with people who are doing the same thing. It doesn't even have to be the person you're playing chess with or who's dressing the same Barbie dolls. It's someone who sees that you're online at that point. You have a nickname or a username, and it can be you can make it findable or hidden. But someone then decides to try their luck and start chatting this person up, pretending to be the same age, the same gender, whatever, and later, when they start developing an online relationship, it turns out that the person has got more devious intentions. They persuade the child to go into another environment where they can start getting to know them, perhaps into a hidden chat room and that kind of thing.
Okay, but now let's talk about those identities, because that's one thing that I particularly find, like on Twitter, somebody's got a weird name or whatever, and they don't put their real name there, and I sort of steer away from that. Again, it sounds like common sense, but if you're a naive child going on there and you think somebody's wanting to follow you or you want to follow something, what sort of tips can you give them to try and flush out an imposter?
Okay, firstly, if it's a really young child, under 13, for example, under 12, is ban any chat rooms where people can be anonymous.
Okay.
So it's not even a discussion, it's not even a debate.
Okay.
It's simply not allowed, because that's where you first lay yourself open to that kind of thing. If it's an environment like Twitter, you have to understand that someone who has a lot of followers has actually invested time and energy into developing that following, or if they follow a lot of people themselves, or there's a balance between the two. And you can see that that person is a serious Twitter user. They're not going to endanger their Twitter life, so to speak, by starting to mess around with that kind of thing. And generally speaking, you can accept someone as a Twitter follower, or you can follow them on Twitter, and nothing should happen. But the piece of advice there is that the parent, if it's a child, should have access to the child's Twitter account and should have access to the direct messages, because that's where the private conversations go on.
We've got to cut to a commercial break. BRB, which is social media speak for. We'll be right back. And we're back. Social media is the subject. Do you Twitter, Facebook, Mixit, BBM, etc.? No? Well, trust me, your kids are, and you need to know about it. Now, while we were away on the commercial break, we were chatting about a very interesting trend happening on these social online platforms. And I was quite surprised to hear that bullying occurs there. I mean, it's not just in the playground, it's now migrated to online. Indiana, you were talking about that. Tell us a little bit more about how that happens and how it can sustain itself, because I would imagine if someone starts bullying me, I'll just delete them or get rid of them.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so, but I mean, if you, like we said earlier, if you take it into a real situation when you're at school and maybe you're the most unpopular kid and all the kids don't like you, I mean, it's not that easy just to delete somebody off Facebook when, you know, it's never always, you know, bullying is so different. Maybe they'll come into your page and somebody will say something about you on one of your friends' pages, so it's not necessarily being said on your page. If you think of how rumors start, how rumors were, I mean, when I was 16 or 15, you know, she kissed this boy, and, you know, those kinds of things upset you when you're that young. And by that kind of being broadcasted, and teenagers, I mean, they are balls of emotion, broadcasting their messages to the world.
And I suppose peer pressure comes into play quite a lot.
Completely.
I mean, you want to be the hip kid, you want to be cool, you want to be a part of it. So there's a lot of pressure not to delete, because then you are seen as the weakling. And
then you've got, you know, photos like who's got what, who's doing what, you know, who's friends with who and who's not friends with who. So I think it can be quite a tricky environment to deal with, especially when you're dealing with a teenager.
But I think again here it just shows you that the emphasis and the responsibility remains with the parent, because if they are under 18, they are legally still kids.
Yeah.
And it remains your responsibility to make sure your kids aren't being bullied on any platform.
Or to teach your kids not to bully, to teach your kids that by writing something horrible is just as bad as saying it out loud. It's not acceptable if your kid's going onto a page and saying mean things, or even saying mean things on their page about somebody else. Like what you're putting out into the Facebook cannot be taken back. It's very important, like parents, and also like I have to stress that especially with Twitter and Facebook, privacy settings up until, you know, the age of 16, when they actually, I mean, even me, I don't make my Facebook stuff worldwide. I only want to share with my friends, so like privacy settings on Facebook shouldn't be negotiable for anyone, I think, like to be honest.
On my Facebook page, I've got a lot of pictures of my kids.
Yeah.
And the one thing I know, people do or can download them.
Yeah.
But you have to be responsible. I mean, you're not going to put sort of, I wouldn't say naked pictures, because that's
But you never know what you're putting out there. You have to think. You really have to.
You have to be responsible.
The problem is that kids are putting those pics up themselves.
Exactly.
And especially the younger kids who don't understand the implications of what they're doing. Their parents have allowed them on since they were 10 years old, and their parents have no idea what they're doing. And they're now reaching 12, 13, 14 and posting the seaside pics, for example. So they're posting bikini pics that are available to anywhere in the world,
yeah.
because they haven't blocked their profile.
Yeah.
They've opened it to the world. And the reason they keep it open to the world is that there's almost a competition amongst kids to see who can have the most friends on Facebook, the most followers on Twitter, the most contacts on BBM, and so on. And that competition means that the kids are throwing caution to the wind in favor of popularity.
Who's coolest? Who's got the most friends?
Yeah.
Exactly. Being cool is equated with having maximum friends or contacts, and that's what actually opens the kids up to abuse.
Now, you mentioned earlier the whole mix-it versus SMS, and now there's the whole BlackBerry trend. Now, I'm sure a lot of parents have heard kids saying, I need a BlackBerry, I need a BlackBerry. It's Christmas coming up, I want a BlackBerry for Christmas.
They're so cheap, Mom, they're so cheap. You won't have to pay for SMSs, BBM.
Yeah, tell us about the BBM trend and why it's becoming so popular.
It's a fascinating trend. In fact, our research into mobile use in South Africa showed a year ago that there was going to be an explosion of BlackBerry use, and it was going to be driven by BBM, because already more than a year ago we were seeing in private schools there was a massive drive amongst teenagers to get BlackBerries, because the influencers, the kind of queen bees and so on, were all getting their BlackBerries, and they were starting to demand that their friends communicate with them via BBM, BlackBerry Messenger.
Explain to a parent out there who's like never heard of a BlackBerry. What is it?
What makes BlackBerry compelling in this country is the fact that you can get it on a contract where you have unlimited internet access for 59 Rand a month. And the contract itself is getting cheaper and cheaper. For a really high-end phone, the BlackBerry Curve is probably the most popular. It's highly affordable for anyone who's earning an income, and that unlimited internet access means that anything you do over the internet on your BlackBerry is in effect free. So BBM, the chat tool, the instant messaging tool on the BlackBerry, is for the kids in effect free. And it means they can have unlimited conversations. Every single little message they send is the equivalent of an SMS. But the SMS, you would pay 50 to 80 cents per SMS. Suddenly it's free. And then the parents are waking up to it. The parents themselves are getting BlackBerry so that they can BBM their kids.
But it's a little bit more than just sort of a glorified SMS service, because you can send videos, photographs, even voice notes.
Correct.
Pictures.
But what's really compelling for the kids is the little, what's called emoticons, smileys, because the smileys can express all kinds of emotions.
Excitement.
The kids love that. And they also, they create new little smileys that makes their messages almost indecipherable to an adult, but they can all read it clearly.
But it's also, again, the responsibility still rests with us, because I've got a BlackBerry, we've all got BlackBerries here, and I know from personal experience, video clips, music, photographs, and the issue with photographs, which I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. You can use that camera, take a picture of yourself, any part of your body,
anywhere,
and start sending it around. I mean, we've
exactly
had horror
what's happening.
And that is why you need to monitor that.
Precisely. Now, here's where the problem comes in, because the typical parent who's given their child a phone, it doesn't have to be a BlackBerry, it can be another phone with an app like WhatsApp, for example, does something similar to BlackBerry. And then the kid treats that as their private life, and they lock their parents out of that private life. Now, the parent has a right to be part of their private life. They're paying for the phone. They provided the phone. It's happening under their roof, and also they have responsibility for the well-being of their child. But usually what happens is they realize this too far down the line. The child has taken too much control of their private life on the phone, and the parent can't get it back.
So what would your advice be with regards to that? I mean, is it a question of regularly checking up the phone, like once a month going in and checking the browser history?
Well, the very first step is that when the child gets the phone is that the ground rules have to be laid down. And one of the ground rules is the parent has access to any chat on that phone. The child is not allowed to delete the chat history, because that's what kids often do, of course.
Of course,
and the parent must be able to follow the chat history.
I think
So it's difficult, but if you set the ground rules from the start and the child understands they're getting the phone on that basis, there's a level of acceptance. Not complete acceptance, of course, but if the child has been doing it for a while and then the parent steps in, there's almost no hope of regaining that control, and the parent has to go to war. It's a war between the parent and the child.
Indiana, that kind of, because obviously that's a double-edged sword or a two-way street. So you buy your phone, these are the ground rules, you can't do this. Do you agree? Yes, Dad, yes, Mom, I agree. And then what I would do if they transgress those rules, I would take the phone away for an extended period of time. Does that work with kids? I mean, is that the threat of taking that away?
You see,
I mean, real?
I mean, I was a teenager, not that long ago, but long ago enough to kind of be a little bit forgetful. With teenagers, you can tell them not to do things and tell them you can't delete the chat history, but that doesn't mean that's going to stop them from deleting the chat history. I think the best thing to do, I mean, I don't even know if this is even online advice or just like other advice, but I would kind of, try and teach them to like a trusting environment, to talk about it, speak about, like say to them like, oh, like who do you chat to on, you don't have to be like, who are you chatting to? You're not allowed to chat to that person. You say, who do you chat to on BBM? Like, do you add people that you don't know? You don't have to be like completely, aggressive about it. Like, be inquisitive about it enough to learn about it.
I think what you're getting at, and I think this has been the theme of my shows throughout, is that the first responsibility of good parenting is to have a good relationship with your kid. Because then they will in fact open up and trust you. Because at the end of the day, who are they going to trust? Who do they need to trust? They need to be able to trust you.
Yeah, and they need to also be able to ask you questions like, oh, there's this person online and they're talking to me and it's a bit funny. I think, I mean, I do definitely think there is a point where parents do have to step in. I mean, I can give you like a really small case in point where someone I know, their daughters who are 15, 16 now, when they were 14, they ended up meeting this bunch of boys online, and it was like a 6-month thing where, they followed the boys. I even went onto the Facebook page, looked at the pictures. All the pictures kind of looked the same, like dark-haired boy with cute, but like similar. But anyway, it ended up 8 months later that these boys weren't even real. They were boys, luckily. They just went to a different high school and were playing silly pranks.
So obviously online identity is a huge issue. We touched on that earlier.
But what happened is the parents actually had to step in and actually they had to go to the school and actually, educate them about it.
The problem though with the argument that it's all about having a good relationship, that is the starting point, definitely. But the problem with that is children are also socialized into believing you don't telltale. You can't be a tattletale. So when something minor happens, they leave it, they don't do anything about it, and then it escalates, and eventually, by the time they bring it to parents...
I'm going to jump in here because I've just been told we've got 2 minutes left, but I want you to talk about... We're not just going to talk about the scary stuff, I want some good stuff. I am of the opinion that our kids need to, despite all the scary stuff, they need to be a part of that, because just in terms of the work environment, you're not going to compete in the job market if you aren't clued up with these things. Is that a valid argument?
No, I fully agree. That's the upside. We've been talking about the downside, and there are many downsides, but there are such positives to this environment. Because what children are learning is communication, they're learning socialization, but they're also, and I believe this is the most important of all, they're learning collaboration. And that is going to be the way of the future. The workplace of the future is going to be a collaborative workplace. And the children of today, using their social networks, are learning the basics and creating the foundations for that collaborative lifestyle.
Completely.
So yeah.
I mean, I can quickly, for me, I'll give away some of my secrets. I'm 25. I've also just started my own little company, and how I work is that I can actually work from wherever I go, from my laptop and from my iPad. I've got a BlackBerry, so I can check everything, and I hire other people. So I will look for illustrators, and I will look for other strategists and marketers, and pull them into what I do. So now I don't necessarily have to have an office or a space. And I think also social media, being able to communicate and learn communication skills, it's huge.
Okay.
Very
quickly,
important.
Before we go, do the pros outweigh the cons?
The pros far outweigh the cons. Otherwise, I would be advising parents to take away the BlackBerries, and that I don't advise. There are enormous pros on Facebook, especially the ability to keep in touch with friends, family, and start exploring those circles and getting to know people better, to being able to be in touch with what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, I think is a magnificent evolution of the internet.
Well, there you've heard it. We've talked about the bad and the good. So don't say you haven't been warned. If you're not on Facebook or Twitter, at least you need to be. If only so that you know what your kids are up to. Until next year, happy parenting.